Hello everyone. This is the story about what if Naruto becomes the Pokemon Master. Before we start the video, please hit the subscribe button and like the video as well. I have created playlist of every what if, make sure to check them as well. So, without any further ado, let's start. -5 minutes after Naruto's battle against Brock and Holly. Naruto, Conway, Brock, Holly, Dawn, Ash and surprisingly Paul were currently checking on Brock's Krogunk, the last three who had decided to follow when the first four left to check on said Pokemon. The poison and fighting type Pokemon who was struck with one of Kakashi Hatake's most lethal techniques, was still laying on the same spot on the ground where his crash landed, unmoving. Naruto had even poked Krogunk several times with a small stick that he had found on the ground nearby to try and wake it up. This led the people gathered to the conclusion that the toxic mouth Pokemon was unconscious. It was a well-known fact that some Pokemon, even after being defeated, were still able to move, albeit with a little difficulty, just in no condition to continue battling. Naruto knew that Krogunk was not unconscious due to sustaining a serious injury. Well, maybe the fall that Krogunk had from a height higher than that of the top of the Hearthome City Stadium might have a chance of causing such an injury, just a small chance. Just then a light bulb lit up above Naruto's head as a fabulous idea struck him like a lightning bolt. Naruto turned to his Blaziken, who was still out of its Pokeball, before telling it what to do. Blaziken, this Krogunk needs treatment as soon as possible. Prepare ambulance training formation. Blaziken picked up Krogunk before throwing it up in the air like it was a baseball. Fast forward 4.5 seconds later and now Krogunk was seated on Blaziken's back as the noise of a trumpet being blown, somewhere, could be heard. What the thought Brock? Pokemon playing piggyback with one another. Thought Dawn with a sweat drop running down the left side of her face. That's just wrong. Thought Holly who had her face scrunched up in an awkward way as a soft sigh escaped her red lipstick-coated lips. Ash had no idea what to make of this so he smartly kept his mouth shut. Conway chose to adjust his glasses like he always did. And Paul, he was looking at the scene in front him with a flat stare. This flat stare could probably rival the ones given out by the deceased pair of Neji Hyuga and Itachi Uchiha. See the Pokemon Center over there Blaziken? Asked Naruto as he pointed to the Pokemon Center in the distance. You have to get there within 20 seconds. Naruto paused as he took out a stopwatch from one of his pockets. Now go. Not needing to be told twice, Blaziken used quick attack to run at a fast speed, leaving behind a white trail along the way. Upon seeing his Blaziken reach and enter the Pokemon Center with Krogunk in tow, Naruto stopped the stopwatch in his hands before looking down to see the reading. 15.6 seconds. Not bad at all, said Naruto as he nodded to himself in approval. Naruto knew that he was probably getting some strange looks right about now but chose to ignore them. The short moment of silence was broken by one Ash Ketchum. I get it. This is training exercise. By giving other Pokemon piggyback rides, a Pokemon can train its speed so that it can move faster in battle. I should try that with some of my Pokemon too, exclaimed an excited Ash whose face had lit up with recognition upon making this wonderful new discovery. On his shoulder, his Pikachu let out a Pika, telling its trainer it agreed with him. In a split second all the weird looks shifted from Naruto to Ash. As crazy as that sounded, it actually made sense. Naruto just gave Ash a thumbs up from where he was standing. Maybe there was some logic behind this madness after all. -1 hour later. Naruto was seated at one of the many tables in the cafeteria of the Hearthome City Pokemon Center eating a cup of instant ramen. Man, ramen was the best. Period. No other food could delight his taste buds in such a way. Ramen was just sublime. It was heavenly. Naruto's semi-final battle had ended at around 11:30 in the morning. It was currently 12:30 in the afternoon. Naruto knew that the other semi-final match was probably over by now. The final was scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Naruto's moment of bliss was interrupted when he picked up some ramblings outside of the Pokemon Center with his extra-sensitive hearing. It didn't help that the cafeteria was really near to one of the two exits of the Pokemon Center. Judging by the sound of the voices, they belonged to Ash and Paul. What were those two immature kids bickering about now? Letting out a groan, Naruto decided to go and check it out. outside the Pokémon Center. "So you are going to release Chimchar just like that?" screamed Ash in rage. "Chimchar is worthless. All the time and effort I put into train that weakling amounted to nothing. Chimchar will never be able to activate its blaze again. I won't miss Chimchar. Not at all. My Magmar is 100 times better even without that ability," replied Paul in a cold tone as he let out a scoff before turning his back on Ash and Chimchar. A dejected Chimchar, who had been released by Paul due to the fact that the purple-haired trainer thought that the fire-type Pokémon's performance in its semi-final battle earlier was not up to par with his, Paul's, standards, was just about to walk away when a commanding voice stopped it in its tracks. "Chimchar, stop!" Turning around, Paul, Ash and Liza, who had arrived at Hearthome City earlier after Ash told her yesterday that he needed his Charizard for a battle, saw everyone's favorite blonde Namikaze walking towards Chimchar, a stern look on his face. Naruto looked really pissed right now. He looked like he was ready to punch something, or rather someone in particular. Standing in front of Chimchar, Naruto bent down and got on one knee so that he could get on eye level with the chimp Pokémon. Naruto then stared into the Pokémon's eyes as if he was boring into its very soul. Naruto threw a harsh glare in Paul's direction before turning back to Chimchar. "Chimchar, I want you to listen to me very closely. What I am about to tell you could end up changing the way you see things forever." Naruto paused for a moment. Once he knew that Chimchar was paying full attention to him, Naruto resumed. "It doesn't matter if you do not possess the strongest fire power. What matters is that you possess the will of fire. The will of fire resides within humans and Pokémon alike. Every one of us has it, but we do not realize it. The will of fire is a battle changer. It is the edge needed to tip the scales in one's favor. Chimchar, if you are truly strong, then you will dig deep and find your will of fire. It is the key to success. Think of your trainer and his Pokémon as your family. To those who possess the will of fire, their desire to protect their family will build thicker and stronger bonds between them all. If this will of fire is embraced by every member of your family, then you all shall prosper through even the toughest of times, no matter what. Together you all will be able to swim the deepest seas, climb the tallest mountains, you name it. And after all that, you and your family will come back stronger, bright smiles on your faces. With the will of fire, you, a Chimchar, can even defeat the most powerful molters on this planet. With this will of fire you will be able to give a 110% in each and every battle. Why? This is because those who have the will of fire have only one thing in mind: not letting down those that they hold dear to themselves. Chimchar, once you have this will, with every hit and strike in a battle, your trainer and your fellow Pokémon will be on your mind at all times. Those who have the will of fire will never let those that are counting on them down. When all hope seems to be lost and they are about to collapse, those Pokémon with the will of fire will fight on and push out one last attack. Why? This is because it is worth it. All the pain and suffering is worth it for them, just to see a smile on their trainer's face," declared a passionate Naruto. As soon as Naruto finished his speech, the shadows of 5 figures could briefly be seen behind him. The first figure was a tall man with tanned skin and dark eyes. He had waist-length black hair typically styled in a center-parted fringe that framed his face. He was wearing the standard shinobi dress of his era, consisting of dark red armor worn over a simple black suit with sandals. This armor was constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body. Each collar of his shoulder guards bore the symbol of the Senju clan on it. This was Hashirama Senju, one of the founders of the Hidden Leaf Village and its first Hokage. The second figure was a fair-skinned man with white, shaggy hair and dark-colored eyes. He had 3 red markings on his face, one under each of his eyes and one on his chin. He was wearing a blue-colored armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit. This armor was constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body. Beneath his shoulder armor were 2 bands on each one of his arms. This clothing was accompanied by a pair of sandals and a hapuri. The hapuri had the Senju clan's emblem engraved on it. This was Tobirama Senju, the younger brother of Hashirama Senju and the Hidden Leaf Village's second Hokage. The third figure was a man of below-average stature who looked to be in his late 60s or early 70s. He was tan-skinned and had gray, spiked hair and a small goatee. He had the wrinkles and liver spots that came along with old age. He had a single line running vertically under the outer corners of each one of his eyes, which stretched down into his face until they reached his cheeks. He was wearing a light combat attire consisting of a black jumpsuit, mesh segments over the lower portions of his limbs, and a green gauntlet that covered much of his right arm. He was also wearing an armored hood with a bandana-like forehead protector over this, tied with 2 long straps. Across the back was the kanji for fire. This person was Hiruzen Sarutobi, a student of Tobarama Senju and the Hidden Leaf Village's 3rd Hokage. The 4th figure had bright blue eyes and spiky, blonde hair. He also had jaw-length bangs framing either side of his face. His attire consisted of a standard Konoha uniform with 2 bands on both of his sleeves, a green flak jacket, a blue forehead protector and a pair of blue sandals. He was wearing a short-sleeved long white haori over this attire, closed in the front by a thin, orange rope. The haori was decorated by red flame-like motifs on the edges, with the kanji for 4th Hokage written vertically down the back. This was Minato Namikaze, the 4th leader of Konoha as well as Naruto's father. The 5th figure was a light-skinned woman of average height with brown eyes and straight, blonde hair. Her hair was waist-length with shoulder-length bangs framing both sides of her beautiful face. She had tied her hair in a pair of loose ponytails and had a violet-colored rhombus mark on her forehead. She was wearing a grass-green haori with the kanji for gamble written in black on the back, inside a red circle. Underneath she was wearing a gray, kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad, dark bluish-gray obi that matched her pants. Her blouse was closed quite low, revealing her sizable cleavage. She was also wearing a pair of open-toed, strappy black sandals with high heels and red polish on both her fingernails and toenails as well as some soft pink lipstick. This was Tsunade Senju, the granddaughter of Hashirama Senju and the Hidden Leaf Village's 5th Hokage. Anyway, back with the fire type started of Sin no. Without warning, Chimchar jumped into Naruto's arms and started crying its eyes out. Naruto responded by softly wrapping his arms around the Pokémon in a gentle embrace before patting its small back softly. Naruto really wished that he also had a shoulder to cry on when he was little, especially when he failed his graduation exam 2 times, 3 if you count the Mizuki incident. This current scene between Chimchar and Naruto was really a sight to see. The others in the surrounding area stared at the scene before them with soft smiles, except Paul, on their faces. Some were more emotional than others. Behind a nearby bush. "That poor Chimchar!" exclaimed an emotional Jesse, James, and Meowth in unison, all 3 of whom also had tears in their eyes seeing this new development, with Cynthia and Roland. Cynthia and Roland, whom were passing by, also ended up hiding and watching the scene from afar. Both of them felt really moved by the heartfelt speech that Naruto had just given. Cynthia thought that Naruto would make a really good leader. He seemed to be able to lift the spirits and moods of others so easily. This man truly was incredible. Sure, he had a few quirks, but so did everyone else. No one was perfect. This guy's speech is so much more awesome than all those lessons that my grandaunt keeps trying to drill into my head. They are so boring. If she could speak like this guy, then I would always listen to her without throwing a fuss. I want him to train me," whined an unhappy Roland who was now pouting. Now, Roland. I don't think your parents would allow something like that," reasoned Cynthia with a chuckle as she ruffled Roland's hair, much to his chagrin. It appeared that Roland was hero-worshipping a person who he had just met yesterday. Roland was currently acting like the second coming of Konohamaru Sarutobi. All Roland needed to do now was start calling Naruto boss, form a gang of 3 with 2 others, and no one would be able to tell Roland and Konohamaru apart. Back with Naruto, Paul, Ash and Liza. I think that Chimchar is probably letting out all of its pent-up sadness. Paul most likely never gave it the chance to do so before, thought Liza as she looked at the Chimchar in Naruto's arms, who still had tears streaming down its face. Liza made a mental note to remember this speech so that she could retell it to all the Charizard in the Cherisific Valley. Liza was a woman who looked to be in her early 20s. She had blue eyes and long, spiky green hair that was tied into a ponytail with a yellow ribbon. She was wearing a red-pink tank top that exposed part of her midsection and stomach and a pair of matching colored shorts that were somewhat like biker shorts. She had a slender figure that was leaner than the average woman. By her side were her Charizard, Charla, and another Charizard that Naruto did not recognize. Charizard was a draconic, bipedal Pokémon. It was primarily orange with a cream underside from the chest to the tip of its tail, which burned with a sizable flame. Charizard had a long neck, small blue eyes, raised nostrils, and two blunt horns protruding from the back of its rectangular head. There were two fangs visible in its upper jaw, seeing as its mouth was currently closed. Two large wings with teal undersides sprouted from its back, and a horn-like appendage jutted out from the third joint of each wing. Charizard's arms were short and skinny compared to its robust belly, and each limb had 3 white claws. It had stocky legs and cream-colored soles under its feet. Charla was similar to this Charizard, with the only noticeable difference being the pink bow tied on its head. It took about another 5 minutes, give or take, before Chimchar finally calmed down enough to stop soaking Naruto's orange shirt with its salty tears. Naruto stood up, Chimchar still in his arms, before he decided to speak again. "Chimchar, I want you to go with Ash. He is the right trainer for you. He will help you tap into your dormant will of fire," suggested Naruto. In response to this, Chimchar threw Ash a cautious look before looking back at the blonde shinobi who had just spoke. It wasn't really sure what to do here. At the same time, it trusted Naruto's words. It was strange how this sort of bond of trust could be formed in a couple of minutes, but nonetheless it still happened. As Naruto placed Chimchar on the ground, the chimp Pokemon took a few slow steps towards the Pallet Town native, who was still slightly surprised by the preposition that Naruto had just made. Seeing the approaching Chimchar, Ash really did not know what to do, so he just took out a Pokeball and held it in front of Chimchar. Chimchar lightly tapped the Pokeball before it was enveloped in a red light. The Pokeball shook a few times before a click sound could be heard, signaling the successful capture. "Chimchar is yours from now onwards, Ash. I hope that you treat him well," spoke Naruto with an edge in his voice before he left, throwing one last glare at Paul before doing so. 3:15 in the afternoon. Location, Hearthome City Stadium. Paul and Ash were standing on the right side of the battlefield, tapping their feet against the ground as they impatiently waited for Naruto and Conway to arrive. Looking at his watch, Enta, who was the MC for this tournament, picked up his microphone before making an announcement. Since Naruto and Conway are not present, the winners of this tournament are. Enta did not get to finish that sentence as several flash bombs were thrown into the stadium before some flashy fireworks shot into the sky. These fireworks left a clear message for every single person who had turned to look at the clouds. The message read, "The Namikaze is here, Databayo." It did not take a genius to figure out who had written said message. Just then 2 individuals could be seen riding a Latios as the Ian Pokemon descended to the ground, and the 2 individuals dismounted said Pokemon, standing on the opposite end of the battlefield to Ash and Paul. These 2 individuals were none other than Naruto and Conway. "I am sorry, but we are not late, are we?" asked Naruto in a calm and innocent tone, to which the spectators burst out in cheers, both due to the arrival of the trainers and the Pokemon that they were riding on. The final match was about to get underway. At Battle Frontier HQ. "That Naruto, he sure knows how to make an entrance," said Scott with a shake of his head. He and his Frontier brains had watched both of the semi-final matchups today and were having a small betting pool as to who would win the tournament. "Would you look at that, I guess you weren't bluffing when you said that this guy had a Latios, Scott." "Dang. It looks like Brandon and I are not the only ones with legendary Pokemon anymore," exclaimed a slightly disappointed Noland, whose pride had just taken a hit. At the Cerulean City Gym. "Kya! Naruto-kun is so cool," squealed Daisy, Lily, and Violet for the second time that day. They were not bothered by Naruto's 1,000 years of death that his Blaziken had performed earlier in the day. On the contrary, the trio were still infatuated with him. Misty had long left the room that her sister were watching the broadcast in. She did not want to deal with their antics anymore today. She could just watch a repeat telecast of the match when it was aired tomorrow. With Lucian. Lucian was in the living room of his house in Canalave City watching the broadcast of the Hearthome City Tag Battle Tournament. He would normally not pay any mind to these sort of minor events. However, he had received word about 30 minutes ago from his colleague and fellow Elite Four member, Flint, that a certain person was taking part in this event. When Lucian saw the appearance of Naruto's Latios, his face was instantly pressed upon the TV screen in his living room, a slight amount of drool escaping his mouth. Lucian couldn't help himself. Seeing one of his favorite legendary Pokémon on screen just forced this type of reaction out of him. Back on the battlefield, Naruto and Conway had chosen their Latios and Heracross for this battle respectively. Naruto did not mind using his Latios as quite a few people already knew he had one. Ash had gone with his strongest Pokémon, his Charizard, and Paul had opted for his Hydreigon. Paul knew that his Hydreigon stood the best chance of helping him somehow pull off a victory in this battle. This Hydreigon was one that Paul had captured recently, shortly after his battle with Naruto at the Amity Square. This Hydreigon, who was going on a rampage at the time, was encountered by Paul while he was on his way to Hearthome City. The pseudo-legendary Pokémon was able to knock out 5 of Paul's Pokémon, including his Torterra, before going down itself. Thus, Paul actually felt like he stood a chance here today. Heracross was a bipedal, beetle-like Pokémon covered in a blue exoskeleton. There was a long, pronged horn on its forehead which ended in a cross. On either side of the horn was a short antenna with a spherical tip. Heracross had oval, yellow eyes. Its forearms had a pair of spikes, while its thighs had a single spike each. It had 2 claws on its hands, and a single long claw on each foot. Hydreigon was a 3-headed, draconic Pokémon with 6 thin, black wings on its back, each of which ended in 2 points. On its neck was a fuchsia-colored collar which surrounded its head. The main head was dark blue and its eyes were black with fuchsia pupils. Its hands were also black and harbored a head in each one. These heads were similarly blue with black eyes. There were small collars on the inside of its hands. On its abdomen were 2 overall-like fuchsia stripes. Its feet appeared atrophied, having no claws or defined soles and 2 or 3 small toes. Its tail also sported a fuchsia stripe with a black tuft on the end of it. "Let the battle begin," called out the referee from his position on a raised platform beside the battlefield. "Charizard, let's start off with Flamethrower. Hydreigon, headbutt go." Charizard released a red-orange stream of fire from its mouth at Conway's Heracross. Hydreigon lowered its head and flew up in the air before it charged at Latios, trying to slam its head into the legendary Pokémon. Latios was able to use its superior speed to get out of the way of the attack without any difficulty. Unfortunately for Heracross, it was not so lucky. As it was struck with the Flamethrower, Heracross was thrown back quite a good distance. Surprisingly, this attack alone was enough to knock Heracross out. "Heracross is unable to battle," announced the referee. "That Charizard has definitely been raised well if it was able to do something like that," thought Naruto as he looked to his side to see Conway returning his Heracross to its Pokeball with a solemn look on his face. There is only one thing to do at a time like this. Naruto slowly reached for one of his pants pockets. Ash and Paul looked on wondering what the blonde was up to. To their astonishment, he pulled out a red book. This book was titled Ika Ika Violence, and it had a crude drawing of a woman delivering a flying kick to a man on the cover. Ash and Paul fell backwards anime style. "What are you doing? Why are you reading a book at a time like this?" questioned a confused Ash. "To find out what happens in the story, of course," replied Naruto as if it was the simplest thing in the world. In the afterlife. Somewhere in the afterlife, a certain Toad Sannin started looking around randomly. A look of pure glee appeared on his face as if he was a small child who had just gotten his favorite toy as a gift for his birthday. He then started doing some weird type of victory dance. "I sense a growth in the pervert nation. Gaki, make me proud," spoke the man to no one in particular. Back on the battlefield, Hydreigon used Dragon Breath on Latios, said Paul. He was trying to get this match back on track. Hydreigon released a green and yellow beam from its mouth at Naruto's Latios. Used Charizard as a shield. Most of the people in the stadium were confused by what Naruto had just said. Wasn't Charizard fighting against him? Latios' eyes began to glow light blue as Ash's Charizard was outlined in a similar colored light before Latios brought Charizard in front of itself as a form of protection. The Dragon Breath collided with Charizard, dealing a good amount of damage to the fire and flying type Pokémon. With the spectators, Naruto had his Latios use Psychic to not only defend itself but also to deliver damage to his opponent at the same time. He turned his disadvantage into an advantage. "It's just remarkable," muttered a stupefied Liza, who had decided to stay for a while to watch the match. Beside her, Dawn and Brock just nodded along dumbly. Back on the battlefield. "Watch what you are doing, Ketchum. You are going to make both of us lose here," barked out Paul. The temporary truce that the two of them had formed for the sake of this battle seemed to have been forgotten. "How is that even my fault? Your Hydreigon was the one to fire that last attack," retorted Ash. As Ash and Paul started arguing with one another, Naruto decided to voice another command. "Latios, use the Water Dragon Missile Onslaught." Latios' eyes glowed white and it created a huge wave of water, showing that it had used Surf. However, instead of riding top of the wave like most Pokémon did, Latios' eyes glowed blue once more and the water was outlined in a similar color. The shape of the water then began to morph into that of several water dragons. Latios then used its psychic attack to guide the water dragons to their desired targets. The water dragons shot off at both Charizard and Hydreigon from all directions, making them almost impossible to avoid. The onslaught of water dragons, as the name of the technique suggested, delivered a devastating amount of damage to both Ash and Paul's Pokémon. Charizard more so than Hydreigon due to the fact that it was a fire-type Pokémon. But the terror did not stop there. Naruto quickly called out his follow-up move, not letting Charizard and Hydreigon have any chance to recuperate. "Latios, let's use the Uzumaki Giant Whirlpool." The massive amount of water that had splashed around the battlefield from that last attack was outlined in a blue color before the water encircled Charizard and Hydreigon's bodies. The water then started rotating rapidly and violently, even faster than a rapid spin. What made matters more impressive was that the vortex of water was the size of a tornado. Battle Frontier HQ. Phenomenal. What a brilliant combination. He combined Surf and Psychic to create several water dragons. As if that was not enough, he continued by using Psychic again to mold the shape of the remaining water to create a giant whirlpool. Remarked a more than impressed Tucker. He was thinking if he would be able to use this maneuver in his next Battle Dome match. It would definitely catch his opponents off guard. Back on the battlefield, Ash and Paul had just commanded their Charizard and Hydreigon to use Flamethrower and Tri Attack respectively with all their might. In a stroke of good luck, the two Pokémon had succeeded in freeing themselves from the binds of the whirlpool/tornado by destroying it. Oh, come on. Naruto hasn't even looked up from his book once since he took it out. How hard can things get? Thought a frustrated Paul. The trainer from Veilstone was right. Naruto's eyes hadn't left the Ika book in his hands the whole time. The blonde had just been telling his Latios what to do without a care in the world. Naruto was making Ash and Paul look like two rookies who had just gotten their first Pokémon. Paul then looked over to Ash as they exchanged a few looks with one another before giving each other a nod. They then turned back to face their opponent, who was still engrossed in reading his book. Paul and Ash wondered how Conway could just go along with his partner acting like this. Had the two of them already planned this from the start? They did not know. In the end, Ash and Paul chose not to dwell on that any further. Charizard, use Steel Wing. Both of Charizard's wings glowed white and flew at Naruto's Latios before striking it with them. Paul followed this up by ordering his Hydreigon to Draco Meteor. A sphere of bright orange energy formed inside of Hydreigon's mouth and was fired into the sky, where it exploded and released several spheres of energy that rained down on the battlefield. Latios, dodge them all, instructed Naruto. Latios tucked in its wings and forelimbs, granting it a huge boost in speed, as it skillfully evaded every last one of the incoming spheres of energy. Your Hydreigon's Draco Meteor lacks finishing power, Paul. Let me show you what a real Draco Meteor is like. Latios, use the Phoenix Sage Fire Draco Meteor, commanded Naruto. Latios' body glowed orange and an orange ball of light appeared inside its chest. The glow faded and a ball of orange energy appeared in front of Latios' mouth. This ball of energy was much larger than the one Paul's Hydreigon had conjured up. It was slightly bigger than a big ball Rasengan. However, Ash asked his Charizard to use a Fire Blast to stop Latios before the attack could be completed. This plan not only failed but would also end up backfiring as Latios fired the ball into the air. Latios then used Psychic yet again to guide the Fire Blast up towards the orange ball in the sky, surrounding it but not destroying it. When the orange ball exploded and many orbs were released at Charizard and Hydreigon. To make matter worse, the Fire Blast from earlier was now coating the attacks, making them similar to a volley of small fireballs. That was not the only dilemma here. The real dilemma was that the quantity of fireballs was so large that it could be compared to a swarm bees and slash or hornets. Charizard and Hydreigon tried their level best to scramble out of the way, but it was to no avail. Even if a few of these fireballs missed their mark, the rest did not. Right now the battlefield was looking like a real mess with tons of tiny holes in it. In actuality, Naruto had planned to order his Latios to use another attack to coat the Draco Meteor and increase its power. Ash's quick counter-attack just made things easier for him as it presented Naruto with an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. With Lucian. Lucian simply stared at the TV screen in front of him with a stoic face. Out of the blue, he started slapping himself to make sure that he was awake. Once he was sure that he was, Lucian knew that he had a lot of work to do. In 20 minutes, Naruto Namikaze, who was unknown to most of the world until about a month or two ago, had just displayed ways to use Psychic that he had never dreamt of. Lucian knew that if he could replicate stuff like this, then there was a really high chance that he could beat Cynthia in a rematch and become the new champion of Sinnoh. With Flint. Flint, who had been sitting in the same food shop in Sunnyshore's City all day long, had a giant grin on his face. He knew he was right. This Naruto Namikaze was definitely one exciting prospect. Now if only he could figure out which gym Naruto would head to next, Flint's life would be a whole lot easier. He was definitely going to check Naruto's gym battle records once he got back to the Sinnoh League Tower. Flint really wanted to try out that Flaming Draco Meteor combo that Naruto had just pulled out of his hat. That technique was really appealing to the fire-type specialist. Flint couldn't even wait to have a go at Naruto himself, even if this man had some inappropriate techniques, cough. 1,000 years of death, cough, up his sleeve. Back on the battlefield. This guy isn't just tough. He is out of this world. I was right. All of his Pokémon are monsters. Thought Paul as he wiped away a bead of sweat from his forehead. Ash was thinking of something along the same lines. Naruto's Latios usage of Psychic was like something straight out of a nightmare. Ash had fought and won against people like Sabrina and Annabelle, and they were supposed to specialize in the usage Psychic-type Pokémon. If Naruto had psychic powers like Sabrina and Annabelle, Ash shuddered thinking of what the Namikaze could accomplish. Ash and Paul were snapped out of their thoughts by the sound Naruto giggling perversely as he flipped a page of his book. Kakashi Hatake would have been proud if he was able to see this. Naruto's actions caused Ash and Paul to get tick marks as their eyebrows twitched. A small vein was visible on both of their foreheads. Naruto did not even bother to spare them a glance. Use the whack-a-mole technique Latios. Ash and Paul started looking around frantically, wondering where the next attack was going to come from. They did not know how much longer their Pokémon could keep on battling. When nothing happened after 1 minute, Ash and Paul let out huge sighs of relief. That feeling was short-lived as the expression on their faces turned into one of pure shock when they saw a giant tree, which was outlined in a bluish color, floating into the stadium. When a random official at the tournament delivered news that there was a giant hole where an oak tree near the stadium used to stand, one did not have to be a rocket scientist to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Naruto's Latios had just used Psychic to pull a tree out of the ground. Just wonderful. Freaking wonderful. That is if you did not go by the name of Ash or Paul. If you were one of them, then your life was about to get really shitty right about now. Man, Psychic was an overpowered move if used correctly. That was a huge understatement. Probably the understatement of the month, no year. What commenced in the next few minutes was comparable to a circus show. Charizard and Hydreigon, two extremely powerful Pokémon, running like weenies from a giant tree. It seemed that Naruto had actually found a way to play a life-sized version of the whack-a-mole game. Charizard and Hydreigon took a total of 10 minutes and 12 seconds before they were able to get rid of that wretched tree. It was really exhausting to keep dodging and avoid getting smashed in the face while destroying parts of the tree little by little. Oh come on, this Latios is a one-trick pony. Can't it do anything else? Said Paul louder than necessary, so that Naruto could hear him. Paul was going for broke at this point and was hoping that he could get lucky by goading Naruto into making a mistake. Paul had thought that his Hydreigon would have had an advantage in this battle seeing as it was immune to Latios' psychic-type attack. However, it seemed that Naruto had managed to combine his Latios psychic with other elements to overcome this minor obstacle. In response to this, Naruto, for the first time in the match, looked up from the book he was reading. He was not angry, not by a long shot. No, instead he was smiling. However, this was not just any ordinary smile. This smile was the smile that had made a large majority of the Konoha military police force wet themselves many times over. This smile was the smile that only appeared when the prankster from hell had just gotten a stroke of inspiration for his latest prank. In the afterlife, Fugaku Uchiha and almost all the other members of the Konoha police military force shivered simultaneously. They prayed for the sorry soul that had just dug his/her own grave. They were glad about one thing though. This time, they were not the ones getting pranked. Back on the battlefield. I hope my mother doesn't kill me when we meet in the afterlife, thought Naruto as he performed a silent prayer to all those in the heavens looking down upon him. The image that he had in his mind currently of a fiery red-haired woman whose hair was flying around in several directions did not help ease Naruto's worries. If anything, it caused those worries to intensify even further. However, Naruto's resolve did not waver. In the afterlife. Ever heard of the saying, speak of the devil and he will appear? Well, that saying would fit this situation perfectly. Kushina Uzumaki did not know why, but her mother's senses were tingling. She had a funny feeling in her gut that her dear son was about to do something stupid and perverted. A dark aura suddenly appeared around her as she popped her neck. She had the sudden urge to pound and beat the person who had corrupted her precious baby boy to a pulp. In another location in the afterlife, Jiraiya started trembling with uncontrollable amounts of fear. Back on the battlefield. I wasn't really planning on using this technique today, but you have forced my hand. Behold the technique that has brought even the most powerful of men to their knees. Naruto cracked his knuckles for an added effect. The sexy jutsu. Suddenly Latios' body was enveloped in a bright white light. When the light died down, Latios was now replaced with Hunter J wearing a revealing devil's outfit, which was purple in color, while fondling her breasts and posing seductively. This forced several reactions out of those present at the stadium. Some women stared glaring at Naruto with the intensity of 1,000 suns, some parents decided to cover their children's eyes, some children who were reaching puberty or had just reached it such as Ash, Paul and Roland chose to turn to the side and look away, while some of the men were staring at the sight before them with a predatory gleam in their eyes and some drool escaping their mouths. Some men's reactions were more severe as a good amount of these men were blown back by nosebleeds. Brock, who had a boner right now, had steam coming out of his nose and ears. Brock, who was rambling about how he had died and gone to heaven, wasn't alone. 97% of the male audience watching this telecast right now also had blood rushing to their heads. Yes, I mean that head. Liza and Cynthia looked at the scene before them without too much irritation. Half of that was due to their higher-than-average self-control that they had, and another half was because they felt that someone like Hunter J did not deserve much respect, if any at all, after all the heinous crimes she had committed, a thought that was also shared by Naruto. Though Cynthia did promise herself to reprimand Naruto and give him an earful for using a technique such as that. In the stands, Jesse, James, and Meowth took a break from their job of selling food to take out a camera each and started snapping photos of Hunter J, so that they could sell the aforementioned photos to some newspaper companies. It was a win-win situation for the trio, as they would be able to make some spare green and exact sweet revenge against the silver-haired bimbo who called herself a professional Pokémon hunter at the same time. Jesse, James, and Meowth were still sour over the events that had transpired during their first meeting with Hunter J, Meowth more so than the other two, as it remembered how Hunter J turned it into stone using her gold cement gun. The three former Team Rocket grunts all agreed that working under their new boss was a lot more fun. Not to mention a lot more rewarding. A legendary Pokémon using its transformation prowess has turned this battle in a dream showdown. Exclaimed Enta over the loudspeakers in the heat of the moment, not realizing that he let the others know that he was a pervert in the process. In Sunnyshore's City, Flint's face turned into a color that matched his hair, while in Cerulean City, the trio of sensational sisters were thinking if their beloved Naruto-kun would like it if they dressed up in that type of revealing devil outfit. With Hunter J. Hunter J, who had escaped from jail today morning, had managed to flee to her nearest hideout, which wasn't too hard seeing as it was only 1 mile from the location of the police station she broke out of. She was watching the final of the Hearthome City Tag Battle Tournament in order to evaluate the skills that were possessed by the Pokémon of the trainers competing in said tournament. In other words, she wanted to get back to business and see which Pokémon would fetch the highest price when she sold it to her clients in the black market. And that is when she saw him, the bastard who had been the cause of her being placed in police custody in the first place. As if that, which made her blood boil, hadn't been enough, the Namikaze had the audacity make his Latios transform into her in such a disgusting outfit, her of all people. That plus the stain that he was smearing on her image was enough to make Hunter J blow a fuse. Without thinking, she picked up the nearest object she could find, which in this case was a wooden chair, before throwing it at the TV. This resulted in the TV screen cracking and breaking, followed by smoke coming out of the electronic device. Hunter J then pondered what she should do next, go after some valuable Pokémon or hunt the Namikaze down like the dog he was. A maniacal grin threatened to split her face in two as she imagined how she would castrate Naruto's face with a rusty knife before burying him alive when she got her hands on him. Back on the battlefield. I thought that only the Latios and Latias in Alto Mare could transform. I had no idea this Latios could too. What am I going to do? Wondered Ash. This battle was getting out of hand and this last technique was just outrageous. Ash's eyes were closed shut, not even daring to take a small peek lest he be scarred for life. By his side, Paul was finding looking at his shoes very interesting right now as his eyes wandered around his shoelaces repeatedly. Paul may be cold-hearted, but he certainly wasn't gay. The constriction in his pants, which looked like a small tent right now, would be proof of that. Paul was a perfectly healthy teenager with hormones. Yup, nothing wrong or abnormal about that. Ash's earlier presumption about only the Latios and Latias from Alto Mare being able to transform was only partially correct. While the Latios and Latias that resided in Alto Mare did indeed possess powers such as sight-sharing, invisibility, and of course shape-shifting since birth, that did not mean that other Latios and Latias, who were not born with those abilities, could not unlock and master them. All it took was a little hard work, Madogai and Rock Lee style. Naruto's Latios had worked its ass off to gain complete control over these abilities. And now, it was a real force to be reckoned with. Sure, it still could not defeat Naruto's Darkrai, but it was still a really valuable asset to Naruto. Darkrai was a freak of nature, whose protectiveness over its master had caused it to tap into reserves of power that were simply put, mind-boggling. Naruto gazed at Ash and Paul, who were rendered helpless right now. The blonde didn't even need to raise a finger to do this to them. A Pokémon trainer has to use everything at his disposal to win. He has to exploit the weaknesses of not only his opponent's Pokémon but the opponent himself. If you two can be distracted by a little bit of skin, then you are still amateurs. You have to think of ways to utilize every opportunity to its fullest. Spoke Naruto to Ash and Paul, repeating the words Jiraiya once told him. Naruto snapped his fingers to emphasize his point. Naruto then recalled a memory during the time he went on his training trip with Jiraiya. Flashback. A 13-year-old Naruto and Jiraiya were walking along a narrow street before they stopped in front of a giant red mansion that looked like it belonged to a noble family. They had departed from the Hidden Leaf Village just 1 week ago. Alright Gaki, here is where your first training lesson will take place. Just walk inside and ask to speak with the owner of the mansion. He will teach you the basics of a new fighting style for the rest of the day. Once that is done, then I will able to teach you an awesome new technique that will make Sasuke look puny. Stated Jiraiya, who put one of his hands up in the air to make his promise seem more believable. Naruto back then was still a hyperactive knucklehead ninja who would jump at the chance to learn new techniques. Showing up Sasuke was just an added bonus. Thus, it did not take long for Naruto to sprint off in the direction of the mansion, Jiraiya giving him a pat on the back for good luck. It was just too bad that Naruto did not see the smirk on Jiraiya's face as he left. That and the little drug that Jiraiya had put into Naruto's food earlier in the day would prevent the blonde from using any chakra for the next 24 hours. As soon as Naruto entered the mansion, its doors closed shut and a ceiling matrix appeared all around it. The image of the mansion then began to distort, as its true form was revealed seconds later, a brothel. Jiraiya had just duped Naruto using empty promises, a sedated meal, a medium-level genjutsu and some nifty fuinjutsu. -5 minutes later. "I will kill for this pervy sage," threatened Naruto from inside the brothel as he attempted to fight off the advances of a horde of 20 completely nude women. Ninjas are trained to deceive and distract. If you can be distracted by a little bit of skin, then you are still an amateur gaki. You will thank me for this when you get older. These words that Jiraiya said at the time was brushed off by Naruto as utter nonsense. Only as the years passed did the Namikaze learn the true value behind this lesson. I would believe that if you weren't peeping on this through that hole in the wall and writing it in that stupid trashy book of yourself, you are nothing but a lousy pervert. Screamed Naruto, trying to sound angry but also trying to not lose his concentration and get caught by the women that were after him. All the while Jiraiya kept laughing at the top of his voice. End of flashback. Back on the battlefield, Naruto commanded his Latios to deliver the finishing blow. Latios, end this with Giga Impact, dynamic entry style. Hunter J's body became surrounded by an orange sphere of energy. Then, the orange color faded and turned purple, with orange streaks of energy that spiraled around the orb. Hunter J then jumped and attempted to deliver a flying kick to Charizard and Hydreigon. Oh shit! That thing can still attack while it is transformed, thought a worried Ash and Paul in unison as they hastily tried to give their respective Pokémon orders to dodge. Alas, they could not do so in time and their Pokémon were hit before being sent flying back and crashing into a wall, getting knocked out in the process. This was one of the reasons why Naruto loved his Latios mastery over its shape-shifting power. It could still attack while it was transformed. Most people were always caught off guard by this. Latios reverted to its original form before it flew back to its trainer's side. Charizard and Hydreigon are unable to battle. The winner is Latios, declared the referee. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, comment down below and let me know. See you in the next video.